Recording. Are you ready for this? He's ready. This is not on the outtakes?
No. It's good.
It's good. That's good falafel.
Below.
I said below. How about you below me? How much do you think? I'm crunching away and there's a microphone right next to my mouth. Well, we had this wonderful trip floating above the Nile. It was surreal. And crunch, 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 Pokemon.
Avenue of Sphinxes?
Sphinxes. Sphinxes? Don't go sphinxter. It's like summer's eve for your face.
Okay, you don't need to go that far.
Welcome to the DC Travelcast. My name is Don.
Hi, I'm Crystal.
And today we're here to share our overall thoughts, insights, and tips from our recent trip to Egypt. This is a brand new video series and we want to hear from you. So please like, comment, share, subscribe. Show us the algorithmic love. So let's get started. Greetings. Today, our Bass of the Day, or our beverage and snack of the day, is brought to you by King of Koshari out here in Arlington, Virginia. What we have is a wonderful common Egyptian food of fool, which is made with some delicious beans, some fresh vegetables, and some falafel with some tahini and some bread. It's all deliciousness, so we're just gonna give it a little dip and taste. Crunchy. Delicious.
Do I get to try it?
Would you like some?
No, I'm good right now. I'm good right now. I'll try the tea.
This is good. This is good falafel. This is tasty. Highly recommend it. King of Koshari. We also have, in addition to that, some delicious Egyptian tea. Very nice. Very tasty. Titillating. See what I did there? Titillating. It's very titillating. Okay, I'll do that. All right. So a great place to start is by recapping the trip. It was in early October. It was over 6 days. We started by flying directly from Cairo to Luxor for early morning hot air balloon views of the Nile and Valley of the Kings, followed by a more focused exploration across the area. We were there for about 2 nights in Luxor, and then we migrated back up to Cairo for the evening before driving over 4 hours deep into the Egyptian desert to bounce and frolic through some of the most impressive landscape we've ever seen. We spent about a night there in the white and black desert. We eventually made our way back to explore the great pyramids of Giza and the frenetic energy of Cairo. We technically spent a total of about 3 nights in that area, but for more information on where we stayed, what we did, how we did it, as well as the links, pics, and reviews, check out our detailed itinerary linked below and available on traveldispatch.com. How much does this wonderful Egyptian treasure trove of knowledge cost you? Pro bono. We're running an NCIS special today. That's no cost. I'm stoked. Luxor. Starting with Luxor. Memorable favorite experiences, Crystal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the air balloon. I had not been on an air balloon before, so that was very cool. I think one of the coolest things about the ride is, to your point, it was early in the morning, sunrise. But when you look below, there was a very distinct line of where the desert started and the Nile River and the feeding of the surrounding areas of the Nile River started and stopped. So I thought that was a perspective that you really didn't get to see on the ground. Definitely the air balloon ride was one of my favorites.
Yeah, absolutely. The hot air balloon ride, so peaceful up there, with the exception of the blowtorch that's right next to you, and you could feel it almost melting the side of your head.
We were like right beside it.
Yeah.
So. Because how many people were in the balloon with us? Probably 15?
I'd say, yeah, 12-ish, okay. A dozen, baker's dozen. Yeah, so hot air balloon ride, definitely really cool to be able to see the diversity. With the Nile is that lifeblood within the area. You've got Luxor on the bank of the Nile, green, lush vegetation, and then it just turns into desert, and you got the Valley of the Kings where all the tombs and Tutankhamun and all the greats are buried there. Thought that was great. Views fantastic. The Valley of the Kings specifically, going into the tombs, seeing the mummified remains of Tutankhamun, that young king that everybody learns about in elementary school. Being able to be there, experience that, hot as balls walking through those temples, but well worth it. The hieroglyphics, they're not only instances where they're carved into the stone, but they're also painted. So you have these very colorful hieroglyphics on the walls. Those were really cool. And then another place that I really thought was a great experience was the Luxor temple in the morning at sunrise. We were walking distance, maybe 5-10 minutes from our hotel. Walked over there just after sunrise. It was us and the temple dogs wandering through these towering pillars within the temple, and then the Avenue of the Sphinx, which were just sphinxes lined on either side of this big pathway. It was definitely impressive. It gives you some cool scale and insight as to what this must have looked like. It just looked crazy time. Those would be the three things I think. But on the flip side of that coin, notable challenges or disappointments.
Yeah, I think a challenge that we faced was when we did do our day tour of the balloon and then the Valley of the Kings. There were times that I don't think we really understood what was part of the day tour and what were add-ons. And so I think we found ourselves a couple of times being upgraded and not really understanding that that was going to increase the cost for the entire day. So I think just the ambiguity there was a little challenging to work through. And I think too, it was just a very long and exhausting day, primarily because we were up very early. It was the majority of the day, but just the heat was exhausting.
Yeah, it was sweltering. We were early, 4 o'clock in the morning. I think we were up in the lobby of the hotel. You know, and related to that, I think one of the challenges was communication. This is something that we might have tapped into in other travel casts, particularly Indonesia. WhatsApp is pretty much the global platform people are using for communication, for tours and communicating with guests. We don't have Wi-Fi all the time. We don't necessarily have network all the time. Our responses and our receipt of those communications are going to be delayed. So there was a little bit of, you know, what time are we supposed to meet them in the lobby? Who is meeting us in the lobby? In addition to that, there were lots of handoffs. There was a person that picked us up from the hotel, walked us to the pier. Then there was another team that took us on a boat across the Nile to the other side. Then there was a team that put us into a van that brought us to the hot air balloon place. And then there was another team that brought us up in the hot air balloon.
There were a lot of handoffs now that you say that.
Yeah, and then another team that brought us from the balloon to the restaurant where we finally met Dr. Mo, who we booked the tour with. So I appreciate the coordination across all those different teams because they're all independent teams. This is not one tour company. But the communication as to, hey, this is what you should expect. You'll be kind of handed off. It's going to feel a little bit disjointed and a little chaotic at times, but don't worry. They know what they're doing. They do this every day. They do it for thousands of people. Just settle in, right? So I think communication, the handoffs, the Felucca boat cruise on the Nile. It's one of those things I think is romanticized. Felucca, that traditional boat with the sail. You're supposed to go out on the Nile and like, oh, maybe during sunset and you have a meal and you're just sailing away on the Nile. But that's another time that doesn't exist today. There was no wind on the Nile that day. The current wasn't that strong. I felt sorry for the captain who's sitting there rowing us around the Nile, navigating other boats, because this is the Nile. This is the main artery of transport in Egypt from north to south. So there are large barges, there are speedboats, there is a lot of traffic on the Nile, and we're dodging it in our little rowboat because there's not enough wind to sail. It was almost kind of comical, but at the same time, we had a good meal. We picked up food on the way there. The lunch was fantastic.
Yeah.
Lunch was fantastic, but the actual cruise was like lackluster. It wasn't really as romanticized as it is.
It's like a perfect example of when people say like, this is what you see on Instagram, and then this is the reality behind the picture on Instagram. We were definitely the reality of what's behind the picture on Instagram. It was great food, super nice captain, but the experience was just a little like
underwhelming.
Yeah, underwhelming.
Yeah. Any tips? Just the tips.
Yeah, and I think we both have referenced this. It's really when you are going to the temples and just exploring Luxor in general, it is hot. You know, there's a lot of sun exposure. You're walking on desert sand, and especially within the temples, there's very low air quality. So someone who
no air circulation.
There's no air circulation.
Tunnel.
So I definitely would say make sure you're hydrating the entire day. Wear breathable clothing, comfortable shoes. I wore sandals and they were fine, but just making sure that you're protecting your feet. There's very little shade. So I would almost say like bring an umbrella to help shade yourself.
Good call. Not a lot of trees in the desert.
There's not, and it just makes for a very long, and the sun just takes your energy.
Yeah, if you're follically challenged like myself, I highly recommend you have to have a hat or a bandana or something. An umbrella is a great idea as well, because that not only will keep your head protected, but probably keep you a little bit cooler around the shoulders as well. So yeah, great tips. I really like the Sofitel Winter Palace. It is palatial, it is grand, charming. It's from another era. The staff was great, really easy access to the pier and the Nile, as well as walking to, like I mentioned earlier, the Luxor temple. We just had a great time there, good food. It's just a really nice place to stay. So that would be one of my tips or recommendations. And despite the hiccups, I'd still recommend Dr. Mo's tour, right? I think just those communication pieces, what to expect, making sure that there's the connection ahead of time in regards to what time you're gonna meet up, what's the flow look like. To Crystal's point earlier, what are extras that can be added on and which are the things that are standard that you're gonna do regardless. And to that point, I'd also say in general for Egypt, for hawkers, tour guides, everybody in general is super nice, very engaging, but don't be afraid to respectfully say no. Be firm, be confident, be clear as to what you want and what you don't want, what you're interested in, what you're not interested in. Essential oils, the
Well,
papyrus
I enjoyed
factory.
the essential oils.
True, but Dawn clearly would like to articulate, I am not interested in essential oils. However, my wife is interested in essential oils. We did do it. We went to a shop. It didn't feel with Dr. Mo that he's pushing us on them, but he does set it up, like to say, hey, I've worked with this shop or these folks before. They're legitimate. If you're interested, feel free to browse, pick up something. If not, don't feel obligated to do it. And I think that's an important piece for people to remember, particularly if they're feeling uncomfortable and they're not sure, what protocol is. Be respectful, be clear and firm. So I'd say that would have been one thing that I think would have been helpful to know, just going in, feeling a little bit more confident about that. Next, the white and black deserts. Memorable favorite experiences?
Oh my gosh, all of the things, all of it.
The above.
Yeah, first and foremost, the tour company. I think you did
Yeah.
a great job finding the tour company. The guides, which were brothers.
Yeah, it's family run.
Yeah, family run. They were brothers. They were so fun and they were incredibly engaging, but also very knowledgeable about all of the areas and locations that we visited during that time. Specifically, if I had to call out things that I really appreciated or enjoyed, the group dinner under the moonlight was just very cool. They rolled out this carpet and we all sat down and we all ate really good food that they prepared for us. So I really loved that. The after dinner tea where we sat around the fire was just really cool. Obviously sleeping under the stars. We slept in the white desert. The moonlight was just bouncing off the white sand and you could just see the shadows really well. And then of course sunrise and the white desert was just breathtaking.
Canvas is white for a reason. So when you have the white accents of the white desert and then you have the orange, pink, reddish hues of sunrise or sunset, it just creates this awesome landscape of color. And it was really
the blues
beautiful.
and the pinks and then it like slowly turned to orange. It was beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only highlight of the trip, but one of the best experiences we've had in travel. Black Desert, Crystal Mountain, Valley of Agabat. The experiences with the tour company were great from the beginning to the end. From arriving in the Bahariya Oasis to meet up with the tour company, having fresh dates from their farm there, snacking away, getting last minute of juice, Wi-Fi before you are in the middle of the desert and there is nothing there.
The cats.
The cats, I didn't remember the cats, but the cats apparently are worth visiting in the middle of the desert. Yeah, fresh dates, the off-roading in the trucks, and we were the only two, besides the driver and our guide, in our vehicle. There were probably 2 other vehicles with a couple different guests that were traveling along, but they did a good job of keeping like groups relatively separate, so it felt like it was a private tour. But at the same time, we all met up together that evening at the campsite where they made the dinner and all that stuff. It was just really great guides, really great, well-organized experience. Definitely one of the highlights overall in general. Challenges, disappointments?
This was a hard one for me to decide. The only one that I could kind of pick out for this experience, and I wouldn't say that it was a disappointment whatsoever, and you mentioned it earlier, it's a 4-hour drive from Cairo out to where we met our guides to start the excursion, and it's on a desolate road. And so I think there were times we were just like, are we going to the right place? It's literally, at times it was just us, the driver, the car on the road. There was very little traffic. The great thing is that you do stop at a gas station, midpoint, you know, take a break, get out, stretch your legs. They even like offered us snacks and coffee.
Beverages.
So I don't think that was a disappointment or a challenge, but I think just for others who are interested in this type of experience, to just be aware of the travel that it requires to get out to the location.
And you know me, I am always game for driving in a foreign country. It's been over 25 of them so far. But if you are not familiar with driving in like Southeast Asia or Africa, this is not for you. You need to have a driver. This is pro level stuff. There aren't lanes. There are lanes, but it doesn't seem like people follow those lanes. It's a divided highway that we're on, a relatively new highway. But there are certain points that people were just switching over to the opposite lane, and now we're doing 2-way traffic. There's no construction cones or indication of doing this. They know when to do it and when not to do it. It was no marked exits, it seemed like, and U-turns wherever. So yeah, pro level, not beginner friendly for renting a vehicle and trying to navigate your way out there, because there aren't that many signs either.
No.
So you've got to know where the turnoffs are. Particularly when you get in the desert, there's no way. I mean, there are trails and tracks going every which direction. If I had driven, there's no way I would have found anything. Like particularly once we got to the desert, we'd be lost. And so there's that. That would have been a disappointment. Absolutely being dead disappointing. Other than that, the drive out there, 4 hours, it wasn't too bad. And don't count on the driver speaking English either, because that was another thing. I don't think that he really spoke much English, but all he's doing is driving us out there. He knows where to stop. He knows where to meet the crew. So no complaints there.
Yeah, I think for this one, it's really about remembering you're out there for about 24 hours. So yeah, just pack light. Don't worry about bringing multiple changes of clothes and things like that. You're gonna get dirty. It's really just pack light. One thing that I would highly recommend is take some wet wipes, and we use Survive Wear wet wipes. We've used them for our safaris, for just trips like this. They are awesome. They're biodegradable, they are unscented, hypoallergenic. It really feels like you just took a shower after you wipe down. So I would highly recommend that.
We'll put a link down below for those wipes. They are like a portable shower. If you're out there in the desert or out in the jungle or wherever where you're getting sweaty, you're getting smelly, you feel sticky, you've got that layer on you, these will just make you feel fresh, like you're stepping out of a nice warm shower. You just had a proper bath, you feel clean and refreshed. I would say, in regards to recommendation, Desert Safari Home. That was a tour company that we worked with for the trip. Family run, like I mentioned. Mohammed is a legend. Him and his brother were fantastic. They know all the photo angles, so they are more than happy. They're ecstatic, actually, to take photos of you in these epic locations, jumping off of rocks and all sorts of stuff. We've got some fantastic shots, and we were in them as opposed to taking them. So thanks to the team there. Also, to Crystal's point of being out without electricity, without Wi-Fi, you're going to get a little bit sandy and dirty. Lean into that unplugged desert life, because that's when you start to appreciate where you are. This landscape is very unique. Having spent time down in the southwest of the United States, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, beautiful landscapes, canyons and desert, sunrise, sunset, fantastic. However, this is a different level, different kind of environment than we've seen like in other deserts. And maybe in Morocco and other northern African desert area, the Sahara there, you might have some additional stuff, but the uniqueness of the white and the black sand and the rocks and just kind of just the
formations
geology there is very unique. Oh, and sandboarding. If you have a chance to try some sandboarding, highly recommend that. Watch your edge. And I don't know if I recommend it, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. As we were driving out there, they're like, hey, why don't you pop up on top of the truck? Seriously? You want us to get on top of the truck in the sand? We're in the middle of the desert. Yeah, let's hop on up there. So we're sitting on top of the truck and flying through the desert.
It was so fun.
We were bouncing around. This could be the way we die. But we
Really?
didn't.
You thought that would be the way that we would die?
Oh, at least get a broken leg or an arm.
It's like falling off a horse. You learn to land on your
It's just
feet,
like
or
falling off a horse.
you learn to land on your feet, or you land to like roll out of it and come up.
This one. Cairo in Giza. Memorable and favorite experiences.
Oh my gosh. To this day, I can remember just the buzz of Cairo. It just amplified all of my senses. It was just a super like busy and energetic culture and environment. And the people were just so friendly and talkative and engaging with each other. The market was just really cool to walk through, the street food and the vendors. After being out in the desert and just being very present and peaceful, like to come back to that, it just really like just amplified at me.
I loved downtown Cairo in regards to that frenetic energy. That's a proper city, such a buzz, such a energy everywhere. It's exciting. There are other cities in the world that you get that from, but highly recommend Cairo.
And I think that's a good point to say that. Like, I think about like Tokyo versus like Cairo, right? Where Tokyo, there's just so much stimulation there.
Overload.
Where,
Shinjuku.
yeah, like where Cairo, it wasn't an overstimulation whatsoever, but it was just energy that just like you absorbed it along with people.
Beyond Cairo, I really enjoyed a peaceful sunrise wander through the Great Pyramids. That was awesome. It was us, no vendors or travel hawks or people trying to sell you stuff, no tourists. They open at 7 o'clock in the morning, at least when we went. 7 o'clock in the morning is right just after sunrise. Got our tickets, walked in, nobody's there. Walking past the Great Pyramids, touching the Great Pyramids, that was surreal. To be able to experience that, it felt very intimate and unique. The only people that we had to share it with were some packs of dogs that were and just running around, having a great time, talking shit to each other. That was fun. And then walking across the desert to have a wonderful breakfast with a view of 9 different pyramids from one vantage point, that just topped it off. And at that point, tourists are starting to arrive and you're having breakfast, you already explored everything, went over, said, hey Sphinx. Awesome experience. Challenges, disappointments.
The only one I was really thinking about was when we went to the Grand Egyptian Museum.
The gem.
And we were fortunate to get tickets to have a tour. It's not fully open, but we were able to see a glimpse of what it's going to look like when it fully opens. And I think where the challenge, I would say, once we got there, it was very difficult to really understand where does our Uber drop us off. And then do you remember like trying to find the Uber location when we left? We had to walk pretty far outside of it, and I think that may go away once they open the gym, but that was just one challenge that I could remember.
Yeah, they have it pretty locked down. I mean, security is pretty high in Egypt, and particularly the Gem is going to be the largest museum in the world. It is a gigantic, beautiful museum. It isn't open to the public, at least when we went. It's been 10 years in the making, and they need to also move. They're gonna move all of the artifacts from downtown Cairo into this museum. This will be the museum in Egypt. So they haven't ironed everything out. The roads are closed, they're locked it down, high security risk. And so we had to find our Uber and connect with our Uber on the highway outside of the complex. So that was a little bit inconvenient and a little odd to try to figure out. And that was the first time we ever got into an Uber where they asked for a password. Remember that? They asked for a password and you had to like look at your app to give them, to certify your identity, which I thought is a really great idea. I don't know if that's something that's regularly done.
Yeah.
They should probably do it for everybody.
Not sure.
Okay, so notable challenges and disappointments. The Sphinx light show is something you always hear about. Like, oh, the Sphinx light show, it's gonna have lights and it's gonna be this dramatic laser type of experience in front of the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids. We actually stayed at a hotel right across the street where we could see the whole show, and it sucked. It was not what we thought it would be. It had sort of like an old educational film narration, and then lights would glow a color and then settle down and then a different color will glow. It wasn't like a laser show or anything like that. It wasn't very notable or exciting, and I would have been annoyed if I had spent any money on going to visit it or see it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also say, like, if you take your family, especially younger kids, they would lose their interest pretty quickly. I totally forgot about that. I would agree.
Exactly.
That's not worth.
Totally forgot about it because it is not a memorable type of experience. So, just the tips.
Definitely go to the pyramids as soon as they open, because you're gonna find it's you in the pyramids and maybe a handful of other people. So definitely less crowds, less locals trying to sell you something or be your guide for the day or have you ride a camel or a horse. Just be careful of what I would call the dog gangs. There's tons of local dogs.
Temple dogs.
Yeah, or temple dogs, and they gang up on each other, and they're very territorial of their location, and they don't care about you at all.
No.
They're just barking at each other, putting their chests out at each other.
Keep an eye on, they didn't mess with us at all.
No.
We were just walking right through like this entire multi-ganged fiasco of a get-together of dogs, and they would like look at us, maybe a couple barks. I think there's more like a what's up as we're walking by, but they didn't really care. They're interested in each other.
If you do decide to do breakfast or brunch at 9 Pyramids Lounge, I know we walked around on the road to get there, which took a very long time, and it was a very boring walk. But on our way back, we just cut through the valley, and I thought that was a really cool experience. One, it's much shorter to get back to the actual pyramids, but it gives you a completely different viewpoint of that whole area.
Yeah, that valley, that's where a lot of the horseback riding and camel rides occur. There are multiple trails down there, and you can easily go either from the pyramids to the lounge or from the lounge to the pyramids just by hopping down a little hill and navigating through those paths. But beyond the sunrise pyramid immersion, food tour in Cairo that we went on was pretty cool. You're immersed in that energy, going through the markets, being able to sample some of the local food, have somebody who's knowledgeable about the food also be there to be able to provide you with some additional information and insight on what you're eating and who to go to for what. Overall, just soak it in. Lean into feeling uncomfortable, because you will feel uncomfortable, particularly if you're from the States. There'll be uncomfortable moments, but that's all in your head. That's you. That's not them. That's you. Final thoughts. Any final insights or suggestions for folks?
As you know, I did a lot of research around appropriate clothing to wear as a woman and just overall safety as a woman. And what I found on the blogs and the sites that I did look at, there was a variety of information. But what I personally experienced is, I think when you're in Giza and Cairo, I would suggest dressing a little bit more modest. But I did find that in Luxor, that it was a much more relaxed dress for women. I saw a lot of tank tops, more like short, tighter clothing. But in Giza and Cairo, I would definitely just be a bit more modest and respectful in their culture. For me personally, I wore a variety of dresses and linen pants, t-shirts, button-up shirts in the cities. And I did take a scarf to cover my head, but I didn't feel I needed to at all. The other thing around safety, I felt completely comfortable. Dawn mentioned that you're gonna feel uncomfortable at certain times. And yes, I think anytime you travel outside of what you are used to, you are gonna have those uncomfortable moments. But for me, safety-wise, I felt safe the entire time I was there. Granted, I stayed alert. I stayed in line of sight with Dawn a lot of the times, but to his point earlier, I was very direct in saying no when I was approached. And I think you have to be confident, and I think the locals there, they respect that. Yes, that's their business. They are going to try to sell you something. They're going to try to get for you to pay for a service.
Look, my friend, look, look here.
But I think if you look them directly in the eyes and just say no thank you or no and keep moving, they don't come after you. They're very, very respectful and just a very nice culture in general. And so if you are a woman, you are considering Egypt, don't allow the fear provoke you to travel to Egypt and enjoy the experience.
Egypt has forgotten more culture than many countries have accumulated throughout their entire existence. Take the United States, for example. We're over 300 years old. Egypt is over 5,000 years old. That's a lot of history, that's a lot of culture. For example, all the pyramids and all the artifacts that we currently have known, they're thought to only be 20% of what is buried and actually out there, which is just mind-blowing. It is one of those places that I think are a must-travel destination. I think a country, particularly Egypt, is more than the State Department threat level, which I think was at 3 when we were there, which is exercise caution and reconsider travel. Fuck no. The people there were kind, they were welcoming, they're hardworking, and there's an epic cultural history and gorgeous landscape and man-made structures and attractions there. It is probably one of those top places that I think people should travel, if for anything, to be exposed to a culture and an environment that is that old, that ancient, that rich and robust. So, those are the final thoughts from me and Crystal. So show us some algorithmic love by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. If you've been or want to go to Egypt, we want to hear and see your thoughts in the comments below. Visit traveldispatch.com for detailed itineraries, custom Google Maps photos and videos. And thanks so much for joining us for another DC Travelcast.
Go Steelers.
Go Lions. Wave your terrible.
Oh!
This is what these people do. All I do is win, no matter what.